Hello, my name is Stephanie Smith. I'm the Executive Director of America's Credit Union Museum. Welcome to the museum's Moments in Credit Union History, sponsored by CUNA Mutual. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Bill Broxterman to the show. Bill was introduced to the credit union movement while working his way through college after serving in the Korean War. He was asked to activate the newly formed Gordon's Transport Federal Credit Union in Memphis, Tennessee. At the museum, we often hear about credit union managers who were given a box with the ledger books and said, "Go open the credit union." Bill is one of these individuals. Now, full disclosure, I could read Bill's story all day, but that's why he's here. The highlights of his 45-year career include stops at Gordon's Transport Federal Credit Union, the Tennessee Credit Union League, Credit Union National Association, the Texas Credit Union League, South Carolina Credit Union League, back to the Credit Union National Association, the California Credit Union League, and Hughes Aircraft Employees Federal Credit Union. Welcome to this show of Moments in Credit Union History, Bill.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm very pleased to be with you. Thanks for asking me.
Thanks for joining us. Tell me a little bit about your credit union story, your moment in credit union history.
It became almost a passion with me, particularly the early years when we were organizing a lot of credit unions. And then as a transition from that to the structural issues of creating a system that would hold up the things that we'd been working on. And that basically the total history of my involvement. Early years organizing, then creating sound structures to let credit unions continue to operate.
Excellent. And if I'm not mistaken, you organized quite a few credit unions and sometimes more than one credit union in a day.
That was sort of interesting. The Federal Credit Union examiner of that day was a man by the name of McNamara. He and I formed 3 credit unions in one day in Jackson, Tennessee. And we were both young guys trying to do different things. And we thought it didn't just come that we organized all 3 in one day. We set it up a couple of weeks ahead of time so we could do all 3 of them in one day. But that created a little bit of history by us being able to do that in Jackson, Tennessee.
Incredible. So your travels in the credit union world certainly took you across the country, across North America for sure. Tell me a little bit about that. What were your travels like?
Travels were very, very interesting. I did do a lot of traveling, both in the United States, in Canada, in Europe. And maybe I'll cover the first one across Canada and in that third job that I held with CUNA, where I was called the North American Hemisphere representative. I would start in Prince Edward Island by train, come back down across Nova Scotia and the eastern provinces of Canada and the eastern states of the United States. And my job was not at that point organizing the credit union itself, but teaching the leagues of those provinces and states how to organize credit unions and how to set them up. It was very, very interesting. It was also very rigorous from a travel standpoint. I might mention one that just still rings with me, though, in Prince Edward Island in January on one occasion. We were at a credit union that was having its annual meeting, and the credit union had less than $3,000 in assets, but they had enough food on the table for the annual meeting that in the States it would have cost probably $5,000 to $10,000 to have sponsored it. So just an interesting sidelight to something like that.
Some of those things that you only see as an outsider.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But very interesting. I did travel a lot in the United States. I was at one point on the CUNA Mutual board also, and enjoyed participating in all the activities of CUNA Mutual that day. And on 2 occasions did travel to Europe and visited credit unions in Holland, Rabobanks, visited credit unions in France, the Credit Mutuels, And then in Germany, the Rabobank, or also Rabobanks, but Genossenschaft banks. So did come into contact with quite a few of those as we traveled around doing
Right.
the various things.
Excellent. So tell me about your very first credit union job.
Say again, I'm sorry.
Tell me a little bit about your very first credit union job.
The first credit union job, that was, I had just came out of the Navy and went to work for Gordon's Transport's Federal Credit Union, or not Federal Credit Union, for Gordon's Transports Incorporated. And my job was as cashier for that company. And one morning I arrived at my office, and the company president, of all people, came up to my desk and set a box on my desk. It was about a 2 foot by 2 foot box, and said, "Congratulations, we elected you treasurer of the credit union last night." And I said, "What's a credit union?" and it's very unusual for a company officer to have met with the union, and together they put together the paperwork for the credit union. And my job was then to put the meat and potatoes to putting the operation of the credit union together. And I did that for a couple years. And it's sort of a kind of a mind-blowing situation, because I had hardly knew what a credit union was, but yet I had to start taking payments in. And I had, and in addition to my regular job, and eventually making loans, and keeping the records. At night, I would have to go home and post all the records for a couple of years, and I did that very enjoyably, because I recognized what we were doing for the employees of Gordon's Transports needed to be spread out among at least the local area that I was in, which was Memphis, Tennessee at that time. And we organized a lot of credit unions in Memphis. It wasn't difficult, by the way, to organize a credit union. We had a state law and a federal law, and most of them we organized under the federal law. The federal law required that there be at least 100 potential in the group that you was organizing, and that wasn't too difficult to find. In Tennessee, they had a state department that dealt with listing all the companies in the state, and so it was just a matter of pulling that book aside and then visiting some of the companies as you went around the state. One that I might point out was Bemis Bag Corporation. And in those days, there was a lot of things occurring among unions and businesses that weren't too healthy. But anyway, I went in to talk to the manager of the company and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, "No, sir, no damn union in here." And I said, "Whoa, I'm with a credit union. I want to form a credit union for you." And I said, "You don't like the word union? Are you married?" I said, "Do you have a marriage union?" And anyway, I pointed out a couple of places where the word union is used in addition to just in labor union. We formed a credit union for that place that day. And it's things like that went on in my early years. It was very pleasurable.
And you spent quite a bit of time in California, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I did. A lot of time in my later years. I was flying my own airplane. Well, actually, an airplane owned by 3 or 4 of us, a bit to the various cities around the state for chapter meetings of credit unions and things of that sort. And it was for 15 years I did that, and it was a very fulfilling time of my life.
Excellent, excellent. And if I remember correctly, you were in California as the league president in the 70s and 80s, right? And what was
Yeah,
going on out there then,
in California.
right?
Yeah, maybe this is some of the structural part of it. Uh, I went there in 1974, and anyway, at that time the league had was it was hard to say that it was a um, tranquil place because some very large credit unions were not members of the league, and you had a lot of small credit unions, and it was hard to. They were having a difficult time working together to um, create a working place for credit unions in the state. Anyway, the membership of the California League was about a little over 50% at that point, and my job was to uh, bring them back together and create an atmosphere where they could do the things that they need to do for credit unions uh, of that state and of the nation as a whole. Anyway, by working with the diverse groups, the aerospace credit unions, and some other groups, the textile areas, those sort of things, we was able to meet with them separately and convince them that the league could support all the different type groupings, but they needed to work together in order to get things done legislatively, et cetera, for the organization.
Well, excellent. That is certainly a foundation that has certainly served that league well out there. And then I believe you ended your career with Hughes Air Force Employees Federal Credit Union, correct? So you went from super small credit union to a pretty big one over the course of your career with the credit unions.
Yes, that Hughes Credit Union, uh, which was Hughes Aircraft Employees Federal Credit Union, is now called Connecta Federal Credit Union,
Mm-hmm.
and currently it's about a $4 billion credit union. But when I went to work for them, which was my last job, the all of us were employees of Hughes Aircraft at that point, and I was put on the executive team of the Hughes Aircraft Company, in addition to being president of the credit union. And the big job was the company, which had about 200,000 employees, was very concerned about the financial stability of the credit union. And up to that time, Stephanie, the credit unions, particularly the larger credit unions, and rightfully so, would try to give as much of the earnings as possible back to the members every year through dividends. But by doing that, some of the larger credit unions were somehow, not somehow, but were limiting their capital ratios. So were there some severe downturns in the economy, some of them could have gone south. uh, anyway, my job then, and then, by the way, in Hughes at the time I went to them had about a 4% capital ratio, which was too small. And with a team of my employees, we studied how much we thought we should have in capital in order to limit ourselves in case any severe downturns came. And we determined that we needed to be somewhere between 7% and 11% of the assets in capital. And when I left, eventually we were able to get it to that point. One other little thing while I was at Hughes that we did that I really think created quite a change in the credit union atmosphere is first in Michigan. And Michigan, by the way, was very good at plowing ahead with ideas in the credit union industry through the years. And they had started something called a shared branching operation, where you go into one branch of X credit union and you could make a transaction of your credit union, which might be Y credit union over across the city. I liked that idea. I didn't too much care for the data processing system they had behind it, because on the desk behind it, they had to have a data processing item that would deal with each one of these areas that were there. So when we started it in California, we called it the shared branching, and we set it up in such a way that there was a data processing center system that each of the credit unions would have, where you could enter, regardless of whatever credit union you were, into that system without having to do it through a separate system. Anyway, that spread very rapidly across California. And from Hugh's perspective, a company with employees in many of the states as well as in Europe, it meant that wherever you were, you could be a member of your credit union by just going to another credit union and tapping into the shared branch. And that was a great marketing perspective for us to have in each of our in our credit union.
It's no secret that I am a huge fan of shared branching. I think that it's what sets us apart. It's one of the best benefits there is to being a credit union member. So
Yeah.
thank you for your contribution to that. Thank you for sharing some of your credit union story with us. I know that I've told you offline, I think you need to write a book, Bill. You've got some great credit union stories, and we're thankful that we're able to share a few of those with you folks today.
Well, thank you. By the way, I notice you're a credit union development educator.
I sure am.
Congratulations on that. That was
Thank you.
something that came about started many years ago, but it sure has firmed itself now in the credit union system.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
You know, one other
Well,
thing are we getting close to the end of our time?
we have a couple minutes.
One other thing that I was also rather pleased with as far as the development of the system is concerned was ATMs. In California, we needed an ATM system, and that was one of the things that I developed. Obviously, when I say I developed it, I'm doing that with our team. That doesn't mean that I personally did every particular thing as it relates to it, but we put together an ATM system in California also, which is now a part of the national system. And I almost got fired over it once because our first program was one where we worked with ADP and 7-Elevens and one other group, and I can't remember the name of the group right now. Anyway, the idea was that we would tap into their places of business and put ATM machines in it and make those available to our credit unions. And the original stab at that worked, but didn't work because it was too difficult to get a sufficient number of those in the marketplace in order to be able to meet the needs. Anyway, to make a long story short, then we jumped from that after I almost got fired over it into a different approach to it. And today, the ATM cooperative that we formed in California, I believe, is still the premier ATM system available to credit unions.
It's hard to believe that some of these things that we just take for granted didn't exist in the beginning of credit unions. So again, thank you for sharing these stories. We truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us for these moments in credit union history. Again, this is sponsored by CUNY Mutual Group. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.